Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Microsoft 365 Business Boost Show. As usual, I'm always excited to do this show, but sometimes I get double excited, maybe even triple excited. You know what I'm saying? I'm here with my co-host, Nick DeCourcy. Nick, what's going on?
How you doing, Therman?
I'm great, always great. But like I said, I'm always great, but I get hyped up sometimes. And today I'm even more hyped because we have Karuana here from Microsoft. Karuana, how you doing?
Oh, great. Thank you for inviting me. This is awesome.
Well, we're really glad to have you here. You know what I mean? And before we jump into, what we want to talk about, really quickly, if you could just tell everybody, about yourself and who you are.
I will do that. So I am Karuana from Microsoft. I'm the Director of Customer Advocacy for AI and Collaboration. And basically what that means is my team is in charge of post-sales enablement, like what you do with the product after you buy it. If across Microsoft 365, all the workloads of Microsoft 365 Copilot experiences, Copilot Studio, Agent 365, the Admin Center, all of those things are my team's responsibility, and we deliver adoption.microsoft.com, where you'll find a ton of content around just that, and large-scale communities and events, and we have a community studio where we manage our YouTube channels. So I basically have the best job in the world. I sit in product engineering in Jeff Teeper's world, so I get to be really close to the product development and everything that's happening, which is really exciting right now.
So I understand,
Yes.
where you sit and what you do, because I love that. So I'm all in. So today we're going to be talking about adoption, and I'm gonna let Nick kick it off. Nick, what's going on? What do you?
So, we've had an exciting time, Therman and Caruana. I think you'll agree we've had an exciting time because it's someone's birthday, right? It's SharePoint's birthday, so there's been a lot going on around that. I think a lot of people who are watching this probably saw you, Caruana, as part of the celebration that happened as we're recording this earlier this week, but as it goes out last week. So that was fantastic. But we always look at things from a slightly different angle here, and I think it's fair to say that talking about SharePoint, there's a lot of work that continues to go on in the SharePoint space around adoption, around actually getting the best out of it. I mean, that's the focus of all of what you do, Therman, as well, is showing people how can you move from a SharePoint to how can you move from an Excel spreadsheet to SharePoint, and so on and so forth. So it's reasonable to say, I think, that there's been a struggle for a lot of organizations with actually getting the best out of the technology and engaging with it and adopting it fully and so on and so forth. There's a lot that goes on there, a lot that goes into that. But a new kid on the block has come along. We've got Copilot in the last few years, and a lot of focus has gone into Copilot. SharePoint is the most important data layer that sits underneath Copilot, so that's not going anywhere. But a lot of focus has gone into, well, how do we adopt Copilot? How do we get the best out of it? What does it actually mean for users? And so I'm interested, Caruana, in that context of, adopting SharePoint over the last 25 years has not necessarily just been a smooth road for everyone. What has been learned by Microsoft in that journey to be able to deliver adoption for Copilot in a more effective way, and to be able to maybe get people to where we need them to be a little bit quicker, because the urgency around these AI tools is maybe a little bit greater than it was with SharePoint 25 years ago?
That's a great and multifaceted question. I'm going to take it in a few sections. So the first section that I would like to say is Microsoft learns a lot of great lessons over the time. I've worked on every emerging service since Office 365 at Microsoft. I've been there for 15 years, and I was in the ecosystem at a partner and as a consultant and in a customer before that. And SharePoint was my claim to fame originally, right? That's how I got into this space. I think, first off, we're making a huge assumption that the speed of the technology company's marketing needs to be the speed of our adoption. It does not. And so there's a lot of hype in the system right now that we have to be doing this at breakneck speed. And that is counterintuitive to great learning, to the ability to neurologically absorb new information. It's okay to exhale and take a breath. Because the second lesson is unless any technology adoption project is directly communicated and connected to business outcomes, people aren't going to care. Right. I mean, I'm a technologist by trade, a business solution architect, right? I love the tech. And so that's my business and that's my job. But most people in the world have other jobs, and that's what they care about. So if we're not answering the question, why does it matter to them and how does it accelerate the results I care about, then we're not doing our job in the adoption space. And I see that a lot right now. Oh, we have to adopt AI. We have to do it. Everybody's doing it. No, what you have to do is accelerate your business results. You have to grow your top line. You have to be more successful as an organization. You have to serve your customers better, reduce wait times, close tickets faster. That's what you have to do. And so, as long as we're talking about technology adoption without connecting it to those business results, we are doing a massive disservice to the global workforce that has to build new skills. And the last thing I will say that's super important for people to understand is the reason technology adoption projects in the past have failed is not because of the technology. It's because of a lack of leadership, poor communication, and a failure to understand that it is the people on the front line who actually have the institutional knowledge and savvy required to make the technology implemented properly to actually drive results. If you're leading technology change from a top-down only perspective without the actual person on the manufacturing line or that's in front of the customer or that's out in the field, then your project has a greater than 60% likelihood of failure. And I would put that higher, but I can quote a 60%
Yeah, me too.
stat. And so I think it's more like 90, but that's my personal opinion. You're asking for real knowledge here, right? And so, but my personal opinion is that even if you get some adoption, you're going to get the enthusiasts to adopt it, but you're not going to get the rank and file, because the rank and file only care about actually driving the result, because that's what their performance is based on. Right. So I really feel like, this segmentation. Oh, we're driving Copilot adoption. No, actually, you have to be driving adoption of M365 as a whole. And you might prioritize scenarios differently. Some lean more on SharePoint, some lean more on Teams, some have OneDrive underneath there, you're using Copilot Studio, but you're thinking about this as a whole. And there's frankly not a lot of people who can think about M365 wide technology adoption like my team and I do. And that is a problem. It's a challenge for the industry right now. But first, we need to slow down to speed up.
Yeah, Caruana, you reminded me. My bad, Nick. Real quick, you reminded me of when I first started, because you said 15 years ago, and I'm roughly around there too. Like in 2009 is when I discovered SharePoint. But what happened was I saw SharePoint. Then I was fortunate enough to go take some training for like a 4-day training. I come back and I'm like, oh my God. Matter of fact, while I'm sitting in the training, I'm like, what? Like, look at all these cool things that we could do with the technology. So I come back to the organization after training is over, and I'm like, hey, this is what we need to do. And I start building all of these things, right? And I did not know at that time that that's not the direction you want to go in, because I used to lead with the technology. I used to be on some, if you build it, they will come. Then I had this like turning point in my career where this guy, we had a big project. He came into this meeting and he was talking about culture and talking about adoption and all these other things. At the time, I did not know. I didn't understand that thought process. But after that, and some more training and thinking, that's where I lean way into now. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm always like,
so
a lot
important.
of times with a customer, I'm like, let's forget about SharePoint for a second. Let's talk about business. Let's talk about your processes, all that stuff. And then, hey, maybe we could see how this tool that you're already paying for can support what you're trying to do. So I'm over here really trying to calm down. I'm all giddy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, but this is also how you build a career though. So let's abstract this for a minute for anybody who's listening out there. There's not enough people like us who know how to go deep in the technology and have that acumen, but can speak to business leaders. That is a career. That's how I became a director multiple times, is being able to do that and building that skill. I know all the things that I need to know about Microsoft 365 and a bunch of things that nobody cares about at this point, that are necessary. But what's really important is the relationships I build with business leaders
Yep.
around their objectives, right? That lets them see me not just as an IT person who can build a workflow, but as a partner on delivering results. And that is a career that you can feed a family on and send your kids to college with. And that's what
1000.
more of us need too, right? And so I love it. So it was 2007 for me, and because I'd owned my own company before, and I was a GM at a partner before, I kind of knew this stuff, and I was lucky that I knew it. But a lot of
Mm.
times, I'd be the only person at a conference talking about business value, right? And sometimes I'd feel an imposter syndrome, like, yes, of course I'm a dev, I can build stuff too. Should I maybe go that way and only talk about the developer side or how I built the workflow or the tech?
Yep.
And my mentors and people came back and said, no, Caruana, no one else is talking about what you're talking about and you're passionate about it. So
Yep.
keep doing what you love. Right. And it has turned into this awesome career that I've been able to marry my creative background with my love of technology and my desire to help others and create value for people, like in the business, like job wise, into something that's really been amazing for my life. And getting to produce one last thing I'll say real quick. I got to produce the entire series of events around the SharePoint's 25th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And my team led all of that. There was content updates, product updates, the broadcast that we did, I directed. I'm writing and directing the More Than Code short film about the community, all of the things that happened on campus that day. Like there's a huge group of people, but I got to lead it with my marketing people. And there's like 60 people involved in this, right? But that was such an honor to be able to do that. And it's because of this ability to merge together creative with business, with technology, that I get to work on something like that. It was such
Yes.
a privilege
Yes, definitely.
to be part of that. It was really, it gave me goosebumps, really. I was interviewing Jeff Teeper. I mean, I was just some gal out in the community talking about business value and Power BI dashboards and SharePoint pages. You know what I mean? I met him in
Yeah, I know
Anaheim
exactly what you mean.
conference, and then I didn't know that, 20 years later, I'd be sitting in a really fancy studio getting to interview him for the 25th anniversary of SharePoint. I mean, this is the kind of thing that really leaning in and becoming, building your skill at being able to bridge these gaps of business and technology can lead to. You have the
Mhm.
greatest career ever,
I
and
agree.
so I like people to understand that there's not enough people right now who know how to do this. It's
Yeah.
a growth area, this adoption specialist that is the precursor to like a global AI officer. Like that's the end result. I put that in Copilot the other day. What should be my next job? And that's what it came back with, is my background. I'm like, cool. I was testing something. I'm not going anywhere, but I was testing it, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah. What you
awesome.
got, Nick?
So I want to come back to something that you said there, Caruana, about the pace of adoption doesn't have to match the pace of marketing, right? And I think you're completely right. I agree with that. But the weight of noise that's going on right now around stuff like AI generally, and when it comes to Microsoft Copilot specifically, is hard to ignore in that context. And
Yes.
there's I think that sometimes that pace of marketing, we kind of have a situation where there's the marketing message, and then somewhere further back there's the technical reality, and then even further back from
Right.
there is where this actually can be rubber hitting the road for real users that can get some value out of this. And trying to match those things together is a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge that I feel when I'm doing training with people. It's a challenge that I feel when I'm talking to business owners about this. And I think it probably is a challenge that you guys feel as well. Like you can see like the amount of change that's had to come along, and the adoption website or Microsoft Learn and so on and so forth, keeping up with this. How do you thread the needle between those three things to actually deliver the best value to everyone?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really comes back to the people again. So let me pull that apart a little bit. When I center my strategy on enabling my business to grow, that allows me to prioritize the scenarios and technical capabilities that I need. So if the bottleneck to my growing the business is not developing a new product, but just delivering more of what I already sell, then I want to focus on sales and customer service. I want happy customers to become fans, and I want my sales force to be able to do more. And I'm not going to hire more people. So that means I need to make their time more efficient in terms of gathering knowledge on who they're selling to and responding to requests. So then I can take a look at the available technology and apply it to the scenario that is most important for my business growth. And then I can articulate that properly to my workforce who needs to be skilled, because then they're being skilled in a scenario that matters, not just, hey, go try Copilot. Right. I see a lot of campaigns that are like, hey, go try Copilot. Try this, the top 10 things to do in Copilot. That's great when you're just getting somebody's feet wet and you're trying to get them to practice. In our user enablement guide, that's a part of the Copilot Success Kit, I have a slide in there that's about the user journey. And the first question you have to answer is, why should I care? What is the WIFM for the person that you're talking
the
to?
aha moment, is it that slide that you're referring
That is
to?
it. Thank you so much. That is, you've read my stuff. It is the aha moment. You've got to get people to an aha moment, and you have to get leaders to an aha moment that's even deeper than that, meaning how am I going to use it to increase my accelerate my results and increase my organizational influence, but then how do we use it as a team? How does my department use it? And that's where you hop to scenarios. When you think in that way, it solves a lot of those other problems that you're talking about. I believe the conversation is backward at scale, and I expect Microsoft and every other AI company to tell us all about the cool things they're innovating. But if I'm actually going to be a leader in the era of AI, then I have to take a hold of the reins and take that seriously. And that's why I have all the resources on the ak.ms LEAI page, and I write about this on my blog that's outside of Microsoft. And I go to places like Davos for MIT and listen to what the scientists are talking about and present on this, because this is an opportunity for us to really lead through the kind of change that most generations never see. All right. And so I think that whether you run a little team or a small business or 10,000 people, taking ownership of your future is also how we're going to make sure that AI capabilities are managed well and responsibly. And we're going to mitigate risks that exist and that are real, and that we ensure that this benefits everyone around the globe, not just a select few with fiber, internet access. We have to be accountable for democratizing this capability to a broad range of people who may not have access to it today. And we're the last generation of workers who are going to come up into work without AI. Everybody after us will have AI capabilities. We are the last generation. And so therefore, we really have to own, with all of our business acumen, the future. So I try to get people inspired about that, and it freaks some people out. I get that. But, what is that saying about, the weight
if it's
of
not,
the person who wears the crown, right?
Oh, heavy is the head that wears the crown?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Leadership
I thought you was, sorry, I thought you was
leadership
going
is
with
an accountability.
if your dreams don't scare you enough, they're not big enough or something like that. That's what I thought you were going.
Right. I want to make sure that there is a cadre of people who understand this the way I do. So I'm putting in the extra work to learn, to stay ahead, to be curious, to transform my own day-to-day work. I use Copilot in everything that I do. It helps me navigate this change because I have personal experience and I know why it matters to me. And then I can help my team because I'm accountable for making sure they build their skills so that they stay gainfully employed. And I just think that we can do it, but we got to change the conversation. This conversation, by the way, let me just say one thing. This conversation, by the way, has already changed in many other places. In America and in the EU and some other places are a little bit behind in this conversation. But if you go to Asian markets and other places, they're already past this conversation. They already know this. And they've moved on to what's next. So I feel like the urgency I feel is about everybody understanding this together.
Yeah, I can't remember if I mentioned this on this show before, Nick, but when I was in the Army in 2000, and I was leaving the Army in 2003, and I did my last year in Korea. When I was there, they had these fancy phones. They had these, they were all texting, and we were all texting, and I had a friend who lived off post who he would walk into his apartment, regular apartment. He didn't do anything fancy, and he'd like flip the switch, and like his floors would be heated. This is like what was going on over there, right? I came home 2003. Texting was not a thing. I was like telling my friends about texting, and then the phones we had were these like basic phones. I'm like, what's up with these phones? Flip phones at the time, but still, in Korea, they had these super futuristic looking fancy phones, and we were texting and we were doing everything else over there. And I came home, and that was the first time that I realized that technology was advanced elsewhere. I didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? Of course I didn't know that. This is my
No, you never know that, because the propaganda here is that we're the best in the world at everything we do. I and I like to disabuse people of that idea. AI adoption in India, in China, and many other places in the world is much higher, and so is AI optimism, because they're past this kind of knee-jerk reaction that it's going to blow us all up or become, Terminator or something. And
I'm
so,
not past that.
yeah, I'm not building Skynet up over here. That's not what's happening. Although I might get the hat just because everybody keeps asking me about it, and I think it's hilarious. But the truth is that the reticence people are having here is not matched around the world, and so that's the urgency. So going back to your original question, Nick, the urgency needs to come not from the tech, but from the business opportunity and the necessity to lead in a positive direction. And so I just want people to talk about that. Now, of course, I'm one voice against the machine, but I try to be with the machine in that once you have hopped on this kind of, train moving forward, you can afford to just take a minute, not very long, but a minute to kind of rethink your culture and your ability to sustain innovation and experimentation and how you do some of these things, because that's what's going to end you up in a healthy state. Or I can just come fix it like I do for people all the time. And I've done for years for their adoption programs. They bring me in when something needs to be fixed, and it's almost never the tech.
Yeah, I don't think that a lot of the time the issue is ever the tech. Like the tech works within the context of what you're trying.
Sometimes it is, because there's that reality you talked about.
I mean,
something was promised and what was delivered, and it's a little different.
Well, I do think that is a real issue, and I think that there's a lot of there's a whirlwind of confusion even for the people who are supposed to be experts, and I think that's one of the big issues right now, and I've seen that a lot more maybe over the last 6 to 9 months from people who are even prominent in the community, of real confusion about how do you match these things, and I think that in itself is an issue. Because you need to have that foundational knowledge to have the higher level conversation. You can't abstract away from that. So that's one of the problems that I think does exist. But the reality is that if you can get that common understanding, then everything that comes above it is about connecting with people.
One of the things that I really try to get people to understand right now is that the common foundational knowledge about Microsoft 365 is a little bit flawed, because you have people who have become experts in one area, either SharePoint or Teams or voice or maybe development, or maybe they're a maker now over in Power Platform, but there's not that many people who understand all of that together. And I'm going to pop quiz both of you. When was the last time you added a shortcut from a Teams document library to your OneDrive?
I've never done that.
A while ago, but I've done it.
Okay, it is the number one most important thing that any user can do, is to add a OneDrive a document library or folder shortcut to their OneDrive. Why? Because then it shows up in the backside of Office every time you go to save a document, and your document ends up in the right place the first time. And that creates good governance and lifecycle management. People have a hard time getting things into SharePoint. They do all this secondary dragging and dropping, and they do, and so that's how come stuff ends up on people's OneDrives instead of where it belongs in Teams, which is essentially in SharePoint. Right? It's things like that people don't understand, that connection between the backside of Office applications, OneDrive as it works today. SharePoint is underneath Teams, and therefore when you make those shortcuts. You're actually connecting the dots across M365 and adding content lifecycle management and Copilot relevance to it, right? These things people don't understand right now, right? And so that underlying foundation really needs some investment before you start talking about what Copilot does on top of that.
Caruana,
yeah.
in my defense, I do want to say you said teams, and that threw me off. So to your point, I did do that because you know what I do? I have all of my branding assets on SharePoint, but my shortcut to get to it is in OneDrive, so that anytime I'm doing anything anywhere and I need to put some branding out there, I reach into that folder in my OneDrive. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I just I heard Teams and got
I have
off.
to admit
That's
that
the
I am
thing.
still a
People are
folder
in
stinker.
teams. Yeah, and
I
they don't
still think
know.
OneDrive's stinking. So, you know, I'm not supposed to. I know
And don't
that, but
do that anymore.
I do still do that. Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that anymore because we're going to probably, at some point, we're going to do something with that. But the way to do it is the shortcut. And the reason I said Teams is that a lot of people don't understand that the folder structure underneath your Teams channels is SharePoint.
Yeah.
Right. And
And
so that's why you can, and it's in the ellipses menu, right? In the document experience in Teams, you know, add shortcut to OneDrive is right there. Click that and that folder then appears. I tend to hop out and hop up because I want the whole library, but that's because I work across all the projects or all the channels. A lot of people only do that one particular folder, and that's good enough for them. But yes, and I have branding assets that same way, and community studio resources that way, and all the things. But that fundamental thing is how come people are now confused about governance and content access in Copilot, which makes the risk people nervous, which means they pause the Copilot rollout until they understand it all. But that's because they haven't been doing it well to begin with.
You know what? I do have a thought on this. So I think that what happens is I always use the gym as an example, right? If you think about somebody who walks into a gym by themselves and they look around, this happens often. They get intimidated and they're like, wait, what does that machine do? Where do I start? Look at how these people look like they know what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm out of here. And then they leave the gym and then may or may not come back with some coercion from somebody else, right? That is what happens with the technology space. The difference is when you do that at work, you have no choice because you have to keep coming back to this job every day. So then you end up in a situation where you're using a tool that you're just like, I'm just doing the basics. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I'm doing the best that I can. When you insert yourself as, let's say, a personal trainer who knows what's going on inside of the gym, and you take that person and you say, look, you could start here. You could use this machine to do this, you know, come back every day and I'll help you. That same thought process is what people like you, Caruana, and myself and Nick, and a lot of people that we know, we insert ourselves as the personal trainer to say, hey, let us make sense of this situation for you to de-escalate that anxiety you might feel.
That's a champion. Yeah, that's a champion. And whatever you call them in your organization, that is the heart and soul of a champion that's motivated by helping others, not the technology. And I always distinguish them from early adopter people who like to play with new tech. That's different than being motivated by helping others. And you're absolutely right. And people leaders have not properly invested in champion networks in their organizations because they haven't understood the business outcome from that. But now it's becoming very clear that the cultural change and the agility that a really robust champions network will get you is a competitive differentiation now. And the folks who didn't invest in it before need to invest in it now so that they can build this kind of agility muscle in skilling their workforce. Because one thing is for sure, the pace of change isn't going to slow down. And once you get in the flywheel of connecting these technologies to your scenarios and to your way of doing business, you're going to want to go faster. And then it makes sense to go faster. Mm-hmm. So you need those champions and you need that community. That's actually in our research, the number one differentiator between companies whose AI adoption programs are going well and accelerating versus those that are stuck is the presence of champions in the community where people can peer help each other and they can create that sense of we're all in this together and we're all learning and people can ask questions and not be shamed for it. and people with their people that they respect in their own departments are out there helping. It's not some random Microsoft person like me or some leader that they don't know. It's actually people that are back to that frontline knowledge are out there with them. And when Sally, who does my job, tells me this is how she does it, I'm going to pay a lot more attention than if some Microsoft person or external
Yes.
person comes in and says so, right?
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
a key
Absolutely.
differentiator in the AI adoption life cycle that we've seen in all of our research and in MIT and Harvard's. I think Stanford did a study too. I'm forgetting all the people who have been studying this lately. There's a lot of them, but we all come down to the same thing. Now they all call it something a little different. And sometimes people give a lot more credit to leadership than I think they should, but that's just my personal bias.
Well, yeah, I would say not necessarily. I mean, definitely AI, but technology. Period.
Yeah,
Because even let's just say I talk about spreadsheets and maybe not in the best light, but let's just say there are a lot of spreadsheet folks out there who've learned the macros and how to the pivot tables and the charts, and they're like experts, right? And they are good at relationships inside of the organization. Now, if I'm looking around for a champion, there might be 3 or 4 technical people who know this tool better than that person who has made their macros and pivot charts and all this other stuff. But if I'm leadership and I'm looking for a good adoption plan, I'm bringing that person in because every day that I walk in, I see them talking to somebody in marketing, or I see them talking to somebody in finance, or I
right.
see them talking to somebody in ops. I know they know how to build relationships so they can get the message across that I need much better than, respectfully, than the technical folks, but I would marry them up. They would have to marry up with the technical folks
Yeah, they
to
have to work together.
yes,
Yeah.
they have to work
That was
together.
a huge accomplishment in our Copilot Success Kit, actually. It was the first time that Microsoft had put out documentation that showed the adoption and technical work streams working together. And I put a
Mm,
ton of time into marrying the milestones between the two. Every other thing that we've done in the past for Microsoft, I could never convince everyone to make them one thing, but that's the success. The
nice.
adoption motion and the technical readiness motion work at the same time. Adoption isn't a bolt on, it's not an after the fact. You have to build those capabilities together. So I was really proud of that work that we were finally able to get everybody also in the organization inside Microsoft to understand how important that was. Adoption's
Yeah.
having its moment in the sun again. I've been talking adoption and governance for going on 20 some odd years now. So sometimes I'm more popular than others. Right now, it's a pretty popular topic, and I'm kind
Mhm.
of basking in that, I guess.
Mm, mm, mm. So
Good
let me
deal.
ask one last
Good deal.
question before we wrap up. So I was actually making a video. I forget what the topic was a couple of weeks ago. But I was thinking about the challenges that we have in kind of facilitating adoption. But it got me thinking about the challenges that Microsoft has in thinking about how you apply those products in the workplace. And it kind of, from the point of view of, we talk about the fact that 2 people working in fairly similar roles who are sitting next to each other in the same office might use Copilot in fairly radically different ways, just because what energizes them or what brings them down or what they feel they need help with or what the way they think about their job is different, right? But the way that they use Outlook is probably fairly similar. The way that they use Dynamics is probably fairly similar. So it got me thinking this concept that there's a big challenge for Microsoft in terms of the level of granularity that your teams now need in terms of understanding how people are going about using products and how they apply to different types of roles is perhaps radically different than it has been prior to AI coming along. Is that something that you're feeling? Is that something that you're having to build out mechanisms to actually capture new information to drive that?
Another great question. So, a couple pieces on that. Yes, we have built new systems inside Microsoft to test and deploy features at scale and get feedback on those features. But they are an extension of the systems we already had. There's some new technology involved. There's new terminology like evals, and golden data sets and things of this nature. But the concept of getting feedback from people in the flow of their work has existed for a long time. You can see it in Microsoft Teams. You can give thumbs up, thumbs down at the end of a meeting. There's other places you can give that feedback. So this idea that we take live feedback from users at scale around the globe is something we've done very well for a very long time. And we used the precursor to generative AI, machine learning, to understand the patterns in that behavior and prioritize fixes and bugs and other things for our various product groups. So that muscle that needs to be developed in every company, I believe, for understanding direct customer feedback is well exercised at Microsoft. We've built in also additional what we call responsible AI reviews for feature releases. Every single feature that you experience in Copilot or Copilot Studio or any of the things that we're doing in any of the end applications has been through an RAI review. And I'm not sure that any other company in the globe does that. Plus, make sure that it is integrated into our governance and security controls and that, for instance, the security Copilot experience, et cetera. I actually think that's the greatest differentiator of Microsoft as an AI implementation and innovation company is our end-to-end ability to govern these experiences and our deep commitment to responsible AI. So, and that's not my marketing slide answer. I sit in product engineering and I understand the deep changes we've had to make. But as I watched us do that, I was happy that we were able to build on this large scale governance motion that we already had for Microsoft 365 and all of its components. But to your other point about the way humans use things, yeah, two people who have the same job will use Microsoft Teams differently. And you'd be surprised at how differently they use Outlook. Some people use rules, some people use search, some people use folders, some people never file anything. Some people are zero inbox. I have 90,000 emails in my inbox. I don't care because I'm a search person, so it doesn't matter. And so there's a wide variety of the ways that people use our products, which actually makes it pretty challenging to figure out what are the top 10 things we want people to know. Like we still publish the top 10 things you should do with Teams and Copilot and SharePoint and all of that, because there are certain usability patterns, if not in the people, then in the way we hope you'll use the product for the best value. So every time you see a top 10 list from somebody who works at a company who builds the product, those are the hopes, wishes, and dreams of the product management team, right? Aligned with the core value of the product. I hope everybody will connect SharePoint to their OneDrive so they can store their documents in SharePoint and get all that governance. I hope for that because I know how good it is for everybody involved. But do a lot of my marketing partners still just share things from their OneDrive to me? Of course they do, right? Because everybody's different. So I think that those top 10 tips for any product are relevant for you to really understand how the product maybe should be used. And then you can go beyond that into how you're actually going to use it. That's actually why we built the scenario library. And I'm engaged right now in building a whole new version of that is even, to your point, a little bit more granular for business users about how they should be using these tools. But the scenario library breaks down these capabilities and also the rest of Office into what tools are you using to accomplish a given task. Because I think one of the things that AI is doing is, it used to be when I taught people, I taught a lot of people Teams over time, right? As being first, I was the only PM that was working on that. And then, over time, lots of other people. But I would have to teach them that, okay, yes, there's Teams, and that's where you're starting with your channel and your posts. But then you have files over here, so you're going to be in Word. There's a spreadsheet over here because you're not using lists yet. And so you have to have your spreadsheet over here, which I'm going to try to get you to use lists, but then there's Planner and all these things. So you spent your time hopping between applications, really. And that's why we always had all those graphics that everybody's made, what tool when, which frankly used to drive the product groups crazy. Right? Because they never wanted to answer that question. Me as a trainer, I always wanted to answer that question, right? It was so important to tell people what tool to use when, right? But now I don't do that as much at all because my day starts in Copilot and I'm asking questions and I have a thinking partner. And now with agents, I have a partner to get stuff done with. And so it's the one going across things and returning results to me that I need to consume.
Mm.
So this idea that there'll be different ways of using it, it's really kind of us all moving to that natural language interface as our primary interface, and then going into Teams or into Word or whatever, or into Pages now, or whatever we need to do for the specific work we need to do to enhance the output of AI or to consume what AI has summarized and gathered for us, like when I use Researcher. Right?
Yeah.
Researcher is only good if you actually read what Researcher researches for you,
Yeah.
right? Like you got to actually spend some time and read that stuff, right? And so I think that is the biggest change that we're having to deal with at Microsoft in terms of helping people make that shift and to where they start their day. And if that's one thing that I would tell every person out there is try starting your day in Microsoft 365 Copilot if you're licensed. And if you're not, start it in Copilot because that will help you shift your thinking to asking questions of this new partner you have and getting things done. You're not alone anymore. Treat it that
Yeah,
way. Be nice,
like Tony
right?
Stark.
Treat it that
I'm not big on superhero, but I've seen all of these things because my wife is big into it. You know what I'm saying? But it's like Tony Stark's. Tony Stark's
way.
walks into a room and he talks to, I forgot the name of the system.
Yeah. Jarvis.
But, okay, yeah, Jarvis. So he interacts with Jarvis and says things like, "Hey, you know, what should I do, or how should I handle this, or whatever." You know, like you said, your partner.
Exactly.
So
That's exactly it. And that's what you're doing with Copilot and remembering that you're in charge of that relationship. I'm not big on giving our AI agents, human form and all of that kind of stuff because I believe in the ban on agents having legal personhood. I think that's essential for our future on the planet. However, I do think that developing this, I definitely have a relationship with Copilot where I do see it as a partner in the way that I lead my team and prioritize my portfolio and understand how I can drive business results. And frankly, I kind of do have more of a relationship, a friendly one with my personal Copilot that's on my cell phone. That's my personal account because I have a named voice with that and I'm really talking to it a lot more than I'm typing.
Right.
And so, and I like the Idris Elba voice that I have selected for it. That's my guilty pleasure. And so I talked to Idris, which is Miko, is the actual name of that little thing. And it is wonderful because it helps me plan things and not forget stuff and add things to my planner. And, it's just really great. And so that's the shift that will help exactly what you're talking about, which is that fragmentation, that base of knowledge, the deep change we've had to do in the way that we think about feedback and connection across all of these different experiences. And I will say Microsoft has, my team and I used to work in Microsoft IT, and we're the ones who started the SharePoint user group inside Microsoft.
Nice.
And that has evolved to become a full-blown champions program. And we have a dedicated Copilot champions program that's run by some amazing people. And they do everything that I would ever want any champions team to do. And they do it so well. We tell their inside IT, inside track story quite a bit in a lot of the conferences that we organize. And we're changing our workforce as much as everybody is changing theirs. So across daily operations and engineering and how we code, right? And now if I have an idea for something, a way a feature works, then I'm going and building that prototype myself. English is my coding language now.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
That's my
Nick.
coding language. And I didn't come up with that concept. That was Ed Averett, who is leading a lot of our solution developers, been in the dev space in SharePoint for a decade. He's brilliant. And he came up with that in an interview. And I'm like, I am so stealing that. So this is my first public stealing of his phrase. But isn't it like, whoa, yes, it is.
I certainly like that.
Nick, I was going to ask you real quick before we get out of here. Do you start your day with a Copilot?
Yeah,
okay. I guess
I use Copilot. I have a couple of agents that I've built for different things that I use. I mean, I'm a one-person company, so some of the benefit that I talk about that you can get when you're a bigger organization is a little bit lost if you're a one-person company, but it's still extremely useful in terms of organizing me and working out where what needs to be prioritized or what we're going to do, how contracts are going to change and things like that. There's lots of different things that we can use it for.
Yeah, I'm
Even
gonna
you,
need to.
Therman, you're a one-person company, you could definitely get rolling with it as well.
Yeah. That's
Well,
what
and you
I
need
was
to be
asking. I'm trying
checking
to
out
see if
all our
I'm out there.
SharePoint AI features, right? That's what you need to be checking out. I want to hear
Yeah,
your
I know.
feedback on all the new stuff that's in preview that we announced at our in our event, which people can still find at ak.ms/sp at 25. The AT, not the symbol. And yeah, the new features are great. You got to go
I've
check
been
them
very
out.
excited to touch them and tell everybody about them. Most recently, where you found me on TikTok, I've been talking about it on TikTok. Most recently, I've been talking about those new workflows that got integrated with Lyft.
Yes.
Blew my
Yes.
mind. I didn't even know they were there when I was getting ready to shoot that video that day, and I'm like, oh my god! And I immediately shot a video about those workflows. So very excited about the new AI features. I'll be talking about
You got to
those.
go see the demo video on skills. Skills are the thing.
Okay.
Skills. If your mind's blown by that stuff, wait till you go look at that skill
Oh,
stuff.
I'm
It
excited
is
about that.
so cool.
I'm very
right,
it's so
excited
cool.
about that.
All right, sweet.
Yeah, because everybody can access it now, and it's just about giving the system, for people who haven't seen this, the business logic, where you need repeatable business logic to operate, and you just have the system actually build the skill for you, again using natural language. And it just, the tech is getting so much better every 2-week cycle, that I'm really excited to see what people do with agents and our new SharePoint skills. But folks got to get the data in there first.
What do you mean everybody has access to it? You mean everybody with Copilot?
I mean, everybody with an M365 Copilot license has access to this new capability. But before, building on top of SharePoint could be kind of complicated. Right. And so there was a group of us who knew how to do this. But now with the new design where build is right there, and you can say, hey, I want to build a new site. And I'm essentially vibe coding the build of the site, and then vibe coding the way that the pages are assembled and what resources are being used to build my pages. That means that building beautiful pages in SharePoint is more accessible to everyone. You don't have to know what a web part is to build a beautiful page. The system will do that for you, and it will map out what your new site should look like. If you're starting a new project and you want to share information about it, which everyone should be doing, is sharing information and having a reference site for their projects. You just go and you hit build and you tell it, I need to build a project for this. Use these 3 documents as resources, map it out for me. Now I need to edit this page. It's so much easier, right?
I saw that.
And I don't have to people web parts, and I don't have to teach people controls, and that stuff that was intimidating, like the gym. It's just like the gym. Web parts intimidated a lot of people. Configuring and editing pages made people nervous. Like this, where you're just talking to it and telling it what you need, and it either builds it or it doesn't, and then you refine. That's a more of a participatory process that democratizes access to these skills. And that's what's going to help people have great jobs.
That Nick, real quick, easy segue right here. I want to tell everybody, if you're not already following me on TikTok, that is my next series. My next series, somebody suggested it in the comments, was these web parts. Can you tell us about each of these web parts? So I do these 30-day series, and I'm gonna do 30 days of web parts. So
awesome.
That to me is a good layer to lay.
People need to know what they are. It's actually helpful. But I'm just saying,
absolutely.
in the future, if you don't want to know and you just need the page because you're in a hurry, you can do that, and it'll really help people. Because there's different levels of builders and skill sets. So this is just so fun. I could talk about this like all day long. Like this is my favorite topic. So
the word SharePoint is overused in my house, you know what I'm saying, by one person, and that'd be me. So
right. I love talking about SharePoint. I can talk about SharePoint forever, but I hope some of your viewers will also join us at the M365 Community Conference that's coming up in Orlando. That is going to be in April. All of the product group people will be there. I'll be there in person. We're doing amazing content, and it's really where you learn how to do things. We're at Ignite and our flagship conferences. You learn about what's coming next. At our show, M365 Community Conference, you learn about how to do the things that exist and a little bit new as well. Plus, the community is super fun, and we'll have the premiere of our More Than Code SharePoint documentary that will be there. And so we're just going to do a lot of fun things and continue to celebrate SharePoint's 25th birthday.
Good deal. Cool. And we'll have that in the comments. Nick, anything before we get out of here?
No, I just think this is a fantastic conversation, Caruana. Thanks so much for coming and joining us. And you've just referred to the community conference, but there's so much content that you've referred to. I'll leave some links down below, like the adoption website
Yes.
and so on and so forth. There's such a differentiator for Microsoft that there is so much content. You can learn stuff. You can learn how to do stuff. You can get that certificate. There's so much out there. So go and check it out. I'll leave some links down below.
Yes, Caruana,
Free learning for
thank you so
all.
much. Appreciate it. Having you coming on here. This is great. Great discussion. Thanks for coming on again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, y'all. See you soon.